let me share with you some tips on how to practice. Now, I've heard this time and time again from many great teachers, and I've even heard Thomas Lang talk about this. Now, this is a man who definitely practices. Have you ever seen him play? Don't play when you practice. Don't practice when you play. Well, what does that mean? Well, if I go to my practice room to work on something new, I don't just pick up my sticks and start playing and just hitting stuff and jamming along, because that's playing. That's good to do. But when you're actually going to practice, set some sort of a schedule and say, look, I'm going to spend 10 minutes on this and another 10 minutes on that, or whatever. But the main thing is, to me, practicing isn't just going down to the basement and wailing on the drums. Now, don't practice when you play. Now, what that means is you get on the bandstand with your band, or you get into the recording studio, some sort of situation like that, and maybe you haven't quite got something down yet because you haven't practiced it enough. But yet you're thinking, I really like that idea that I saw, Steve Gadd play once, and I want to try to do that. But you never really practiced it. And you try to pull it off on stage, and it totally doesn't work. So that's what that means by don't practice when you play. Make sure that what you play, you can already play. I hope you understand that. So that's a big one. The main thing is when you're in the practice room, try to stay focused. Practicing is a solo art, meaning it's just you. So it can be a little lonely at times, but we understand that. Make the most of that. When there's a crowd watching you play, if you're in the studio and there's an engineer and people standing around watching you record, make sure that you're ready to do what you have to do. Another great tip is to practice in front of a mirror. Now, it's not so you can check yourself out. It's basically so you can check your posture. You don't want to be hunched over when you're practicing, especially if you're working on something that's difficult or maybe something that you're not totally interested in. Our tendency could be kind of like, I don't want to work on this. Watch that, so you can check out and make sure you can see yourself in the mirror. I usually put it to the side of me so I can look and see if everything is lining up. You can also make sure your hand technique is proper. You're also going to notice that your drum set will be set up properly. If you look to the side of the mirror and you see that drums are too high or too low, and maybe you're reaching, or maybe things are too high, these are also going to help you, which is really great. It's just going to make your practicing that much easier in the long run. So posture, hand technique, seat height, where your feet are on the pedals, this all has a big role in what we do when we practice the drums. Now, when you go to the practice room and you want to work on something that maybe you heard that's very, very cool and exciting to play, make sure that you stay focused on that. If you want to make that a part of your playing, you definitely have to stay focused. Don't let your mind wander and go, okay, now I'm going to work on this other lick that I already got mastered, 5 weeks ago. Just stay focused. If it's not coming to you, say you're working on something and your brain is just melting that day and you go, I just can't get this. Put it away. Come back a few days later. The last thing you want to do is end up frustrating yourself on this instrument. As a youngster, I did that many, many times where I would get angry and I would throw things and knock things over. And that's not good for anybody. You're going to wreck things. You're going to damage things. One funny story was I was working on something that I had to do for my teacher. And what I used to do to kind of count to 10, being a 17-year-old at the time, is I'd throw my drumstick. And basically what would happen is I'd have to get up and get it and count to 10 and come back and work on it. And so I'd always throw the stick and I'd hear it hit the back wall, and then I'd go find it, and I'd come back and I'd be like, okay. So one day I'm practicing something and I throw the stick and I didn't hear it hit the ground. And so I'm walking around and I thought, that's kind of weird. Usually I hear it hit the ground. We had a concrete floor in the basement there. And I went over, I'm looking around for it, and all of a sudden something poked me in the shoulder, and it was the drumstick. It actually stuck into the drywall. Well, needless to say, I put a poster up over it so my folks wouldn't see it. And sure enough, my mom comes downstairs and says, what's this poster doing here? I don't want anything on this wall. Takes the poster off, and there's a big hole in the wall for my drumstick. So lesson 1, don't get angry. If it's not working, come back to it a day or two later. It might become that much easier. So with that in mind, you always want to end on a positive note. Basically, when you practice something, over and over and over, it's going to sound better and better every day. It's definitely going to sound better than it did yesterday or the day before or the last time you practiced it. So the main thing to do is to make sure that when you're not in the mood to practice, is maybe just don't practice that day. There's nothing saying you have to practice every single day. I personally don't. You might hear a lot of drummers do a lot of great things on the drumming system here. Maybe you hear some really cool things that I've played. These are things that I have practiced a lot because they're very, very important to me. Now, I also have future practice priorities, meaning that I have a lot of things that I want to start working on in the near future that maybe I can't do very well right now. I consider myself a student of the drum, and I'm always going to learn until I'm physically incapable of playing the drums, which hopefully won't be for another 50 or 60 years. But the main thing is, every time I come back to the drum set, I want to start on a positive note and end on a positive note.